has every secret feature that you might not have noticed in your Switch 2. Before the Switch 2 came out, everyone doubted just how strong the magnets would be. But in fact, you can even hold it up just this way and actually have it hold steady. So here are the different tricks that they made to make this possible. The first off is that the SL and SR buttons that we see on the side of the Joy-Cons are actually made of solid steel instead of plastic, which doubles them as exposed magnetic surfaces for the magnets to attach to. But one of the ways that Nintendo makes this safe is that there's a little bit of wiggle room that exists in between the controllers, so that even if you twist the controller back, the metal buttons still stay flatly aligned with the magnets. And that's why certain third-party accessories actually make this magnetic connection weaker by limiting that space that they have to wiggle. And because of the shape of the Joy-Con 2s, it's actually possible to attach them upside down onto the wrong side of the console, or you can just put them on backwards. There's even an on-screen Easter egg for when you do this for the first time. And while it doesn't do much, it is pretty funny. Here's an Easter egg that was carried over from the original Switch that still exists in the Switch 2. Now, when you're waking up your Switch 2 from sleep mode and handheld, you'll have to press any button 3 times in a row to unlock the system. But using different buttons can play different sounds. Like ZL will play squeak noises, ZR is bird noises, right analog stick will give us the cork squeeze, while the left analog plays a cuckoo clock. Pressing the plus button will start off an old school space laser shot, and the minus button plays some sort of radio communication beeps and bloops. Which is that kind of little detail that I really like about Nintendo stuff. Even if not everyone's gonna notice it, the ones who do usually appreciate it. As Nintendo explains in the Welcome Tour, the way that the mouse sensor works on each of the Joy-Con 2 is actually due to a small black and white camera that's inside of the controller. And when I say small, I mean small. The resolution of this is less pixels than the original Switch 1 Joy-Con's IR motion camera. It's even less than the original Game Boy camera accessory. And while Nintendo has yet to release the official specs of the camera, the graphic they're showing off is only 10 by 10 pixels, which is substantially smaller. But the benefit of being so small is that they can take thousands of pictures per second, and that way it can work on just about any surface, whether that's a notebook, a couch cushion, or even just your leg. There are different sounds that you'll get for pressing the C button and for selecting each icon on the home menu. Here, pay close attention. What I think is particularly fun is that each of the sounds are meant to invoke the icon that they're assigned to. Like the settings icon, which is shaped after a gear, sounds like a gear spinning. The controller settings sound sounds like a Joy-Con clicking into place. Virtual game card is like a Switch game card being clicked into place. And while each of the noises are distinct from each other, the noises that you'll hear from the C button and the game chat icon actually end up being the same. Makes sense, they're related. And there's also a specific sound that you hear only when you've woken up the system from docked in sleep mode. A new feature that you'll find on the Switch 2 is a feature aptly named Search for Controllers, which will cause a Joy-Con 2 controller that's paired and within range to vibrate and make a sound, which can help you locate if you lose it. That sound being one lower pitched beep and then 2 higher pitched beeps, which repeat in that order. And while the original Switch did have a Find Controllers feature that let you select nearby controllers and make them repeatedly vibrate, given how weak the original Joy-Con's vibration is, you'd probably have a hard time hearing or even feeling that controller lost when it's between your couch cushions. And now with a noise and a much stronger vibration motor, it should be a lot easier to find. When you're in the change grip/order section of the controller settings, you'll notice that a sound plays whenever you press the LR, ZL, and ZR, or SL and SR buttons. And the reason that's important is that the pitch of the noise is actually lowest for the controller 1's L button, and then highest for the controller 4's R button, effectively giving us a simple musical scale that you can play across all the controller buttons. Also, you can mix and match Joy-Cons, letting you play with a Joy-Con 1 in one hand and a Joy-Con 2 in the other. The on-screen icon even correctly displays the color and size difference. One of the settings you might want to turn on in system settings is the ability to enable a system lock, which is where you're able to set up a pin system that will be required to actually unlock the system from sleep. Now, the default input is using an analog stick, but there is also a keypad option. But don't worry, if you forget it, you can just use your Nintendo account to log in elsewhere and then unlock the console that way. If you're hoping to reuse the microSD card that you have from your original Switch and your Switch 2, well, it's unfortunately incompatible. Consider that the Switch 2 only is able to use the microSD Express cards for expanded storage, since that is a much faster read and write speed. But if you were to take your original microSD from your Switch 1 and put it into the Switch 2, then even though it won't give you extra storage, it will let you view all of your old screenshots and videos from the original card, and then you can transfer that onto your Switch 2 system memory. If you just got your Switch 2, you might want to turn on this setting as soon as you can, because although it's disabled by default, there's a setting that actually prevents you from overcharging the battery by stopping the system from charging once it reaches 90%. You'll notice that a lot of smartphones have this feature now too, and while that does mean that the Switch 2 would actually have a slightly shorter battery life in handheld mode, it could be good for the long-term health of the battery, and overall extend the lifetime of the console by a good amount. In the controller settings menu that's accessible from the home screen, there's a short tutorial tutorial that you can play aptly named How to Use Mouse Controls, which will tell you that if you use a strap, that'll make the mouse mode easier, and it shows you how the analog stick could be used to scroll through a list, and it'll give you a couple examples for where that could be used. But that isn't hidden detail, since it could be easy to overlook this, but you can actually click on some of the buttons in the example graphic on the left and pop these balloons on the right. While the original Switch's touchscreen only allowed you to have 5 points on at once, the Switch 2 effectively lets us use all 10 of our digits at once. There's even a minigame inside a Welcome Tour that lets you play Touchscreen Finger Twister, which is a phrase I never wanted to say and never wanted to hear, so sorry about that. The built-in microphone inside the Switch 2 has gotten a lot of attention. I mean, it should if they're gonna expect us to pay for game chat. But more impressive might just be the audio processing chip behind it, since not only does it remove obvious distracting background sounds like air conditioners or vacuum cleaners, but it could also filter out the sound of the fan inside of the system. And speaking candidly, I was shocked when I tested out how good this was. I mean, even sitting at the back of my desk, completely in the dock behind my monitor, it was able to pick up my mic just fine. And it should do, if they expect us to have it plugged in underneath our TV with the speakers blaring while we're trying to play with our friends. The official Nintendo Switch 2 camera has an LED that'll turn on to indicate when the camera's being used. And if you want to make extra sure that it's not on, then you can always turn this physical privacy shutter, which will let you block out the camera entirely, even when it's on. And because of the help of a tension spring that's inside, that'll make sure that it's either opened or closed, not somewhere in between. Though, if you don't want to actually use the Switch 2's original camera, then it is actually possible with a whole bunch of other USB cameras. So just about any other webcam that you have on hand, you might be able to use. And you'll find this place in the menu to test the different USB cameras. The Switch 2 does have HD rumble the same as the Switch 1, but it's notably different in the way that it plays sounds. Yeah, you heard me right. Because of the vibration motors inside of this thing, you might think that the Joy-Con 2 has a speaker inside of it, but it's actually just because of how the vibration motor works inside of it, letting it accurately play the sounds of a Mario coin and even a 1-up inside of the Welcome Tour. And considering the original HD Rumble wasn't good for much more than 1-2 Switch and a couple of Mario Party minigames, it's hard to say how much use we'll get out of this, but it's impressive technology. Normally when you boot up the Nintendo Switch Online GameCube app, you'll get that usual red splash screen. However, if you were to input something as the app loads, right here, just after the Joy-Cons loading and the animation click together, you can get the iconic GameCube jingle and opening animation. And to get this, you can press any of the face buttons, the analog stick, L, ZL, and ZR. Though if you were to hold down the R button, then you'll get a squeaky variation that ends up in a child's laugh, which is itself also a reference to something that would happen when you press the Z button in the original GameCube variation. And likewise, in both the original hardware and the NSO GameCube app, holding the R button on 4 separate controllers simultaneously will play the rare version that features the vocals and percussion that originates from Kabuki Theater. By default in Nintendo Switch Online app, the menu ribbon on the left is red. However, if you were to load up the NSO GameCube app with an NSO GameCube controller connected, then that red ribbon will switch to purple, and some of the recognizable sounds will play in place the usual menu beeps and boops, such as these sounds that you can hear from Super Mario Sunshine. I guess it's nice to be acknowledged for buying the controller, huh? If you're one of the people who bought the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour game, then your pockets might feel $10 lighter, but it is a little bit of fun. But if you find it's impossible for you to play certain mini games because they actually require you to buy even more equipment, such as the camera and the Pro Controller, then you should know that you can skip the mini games and demos inside of this by doing 3 short presses of the Y button, 3 long presses, and then 3 short presses, which ends up being 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots, or SOS in Morse code. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?